Well, we've done studies of betrayal where a teacher says, okay, I'm going to drop your lowest grade an exam, and then everyone does really badly, and the teacher, this is a hypothetical scenario. So a teacher says, all right, I'm so disappointed, you can't drop your lowest grade. And so they change the policy, which, goes against integrity. And it hurts beneficence, and we ask how would students respond to it, and the motivation to do well plummets, the evaluation of the teacher's overall competence plummets, so that kind of thing really drops completely, and you'd think well, who would ever do such a thing like that? But I've been collecting stories on Twitter of horror stories of faculty who do that kind of thing.
You've just heard Stephen Chu from Samford University in Birmingham, Alabama. I had the opportunity to sit down with Steve for a Part 2 interview when we were both at the Southeastern Psychological Association annual meeting in New Orleans, Louisiana in spring 2023. I want to thank the SEPA Executive Committee for making the space available to Psych Sessions to conduct this interview. And now, please enjoy this conversation with Steve Chu. Hi, folks. This is Garth, and I want to tell you about a publisher who might be a little new to psychology, but who has been doing high-quality work in creating affordable and innovative textbooks for nearly 20 years. And they've got a great name. This is Sumo Learning. That's SOOMO. And I first met them when they came out to TIP Northwest in 2022. And I got to tell you, our attendees were so impressed with what they learned about Sumo's book and its mission. So the book is called Psychology in the Real World by author Jennifer Harper, and it focuses on psychology's big ideas. It's up to date with everything related to APA's Introductory Psychology Initiative, and it's peer-reviewed. And it includes high-quality, innovative supplements. Even with all that, it encourages student learning along the way, from engaging study questions to its affordability. It's really got everything that you and your students want in a textbook, so check it out. Go to sumolearning.com. That's SOOMO learning.com and check out Psychology in the Real World. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. Psych Sessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter. Hi folks, Garth again. I'm going to get you right to the interview, but I just wanted to let you know that when Steve and I started talking, the mics were already on and we were already into it, and so I didn't stop to make a formal introduction of the episode with him. So if you find yourself trying to figure out what we're talking about, I just didn't want to miss any of this beginning conversation, which I thought was pretty interesting, and so I just kept it all in, and here you go.
I guess they decide it's not worth their while or something.
Are they? Well, I have a bunch of questions about that, but one of them is: do you put together a practice exam? You put it together 2 exams?
So each exam is a practice exam. This happened. I started doing this during the pandemic, and because I wanted to support their learning. I used to do it early in my career, and then I realized that this was like people were using this as a substitute for studying, going through and figuring out the correct answer. And on the practice exam, it's like, okay, well, if I found the answer to the practice exam, that means I'm ready for the exam, and it doesn't mean that at all. So I stopped doing it. But then during the pandemic, it's one of those things I reinstituted, and I've just kept it in. So I'm going to have to think about if I want to keep sort of doing that kind of thing. So I don't know. If I get rid of it next semester, if anyone will really complain about it or anything. So I don't know.
Right, because a third of them only a third of them are taking it.
Yeah. Well, no, a third of them aren't. 2/3 are taking it, but you would think that most everyone would take it just for practice. But I've got a just big percentage that just aren't. Either they're not getting to it, or they don't see the value in it, or something like that.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, I'm already recording, by the way, so.
Oh, okay.
But I think people are going to like listening to the fact that not everything goes perfectly for Steve Chu in his classes.
Well, very little goes perfectly for me, I don't think.
Are you always tweaking?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think I remember that from our last conversation.
Yeah, it's, and so I posted the PowerPoints from when I made the videos, but, I've added stuff, taken out stuff, and, to the PowerPoint slides, and you just can't help but see like, oh, that would be great. So, or there's some, more recent finding or something like that. So
what's your process? Are you doing that in your office before you go in and go to class?
Well, yeah. If I'm really good about it, I'll do it ahead of time. But it's where you just come across like on Twitter or the Facebook group. You're like, oh, that would be great, and sometimes it's just kind of like cute stuff, like bees sleeping, So because I always say, like all animals have some sort of rest period. Oh, look, bees sleeping in a flower. So I got to put that in there, and just to kind of keep them engaged and keep.
So you'll read something, and then in the moment you'll just go find that lecture and put it in there. Yeah. Is that your process?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so and what'll also happen is if I see like a research article that is relevant to things we've talked about, I'll actually put it in the article, the lecture we're doing currently. It's just like, we'll take a few minutes at the beginning where I'll say, oh, look, this article just came out and we talked about this. That's I don't know how much they really sort of take how engaged you are by that, but at least I'm modeling for them like interest and curiosity and like, isn't this great? So I hope they're seeing that kind of thing.
And space practice, right? So you might not come back to it again, or they may not see that content again if you don't do that, right? Yeah. So
yeah, exactly. So I'm always tweaking stuff. I came up with this idea of 2 truths and a lie last summer.
For misconceptions?
And just for metacognition and misconceptions and just retrieval practice, and it's instead of like doing starting the class with here's a quiz question or something like that. It's like, let's play 2 truths and a lie. So it's kind of like more of a game kind of thing. That's fun. So it kind of it triggers more of an enjoyment kind of response. Like, let's play a game rather than, this is like a quiz kind of a thing. Even a no stakes quiz question is still kind of a quiz question.
Yeah. How did you come up with that one?
Well, okay, it's a kind of a long story.
We have time.
Well, yeah. Remember I do Psych Friday, this conference for local AP psychology students. And so I was trying to think of activities. We have an activity fair. So they do, Stroop effect and optical illusions and McGurk effect and all these other things. And I was trying to think of some new ones. And, I just thought like a very popular icebreaker is 2 truths and a lie, and it's kind of fun, kind of a thing to do. And I thought, I can do that with like misconceptions or with facts. So I generated 10 right off the bat and tried them, and students really enjoyed them. The high school students really enjoyed them, and so I started thinking, this is actually like formative. You can use this for formative assessment. So it started developing from there, and then I gave a workshop for TOPS over the summer. So I introduced the idea there, and they seemed to like it. And then they asked me to write a PTN article about it, so I did that. And
I missed it. I was just going to say you should write about it, but you have.
Yeah, in PTN.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Listeners, if you want 20% off all APA books and videos, keep listening. The American Psychological Association offers valuable resources to better help you help your students, as well as enrich your professional life. APA Books publishes critically acclaimed and award-winning books developed by experts to support researchers and students. Visit apa.org/pubs, P-U-B-S, and enter discount code APAPOD20, that's all uppercase, at checkout to receive 20% off all APA books and videos available online. APA Books also hosts free webinars featuring APA authors. Visit bks.apa.org/webinar to register for upcoming APA Books webinars and to view previous webinars. We are so grateful to have APA Books as a sponsor for Psych Sessions.
So what are some of the lies? Do you remember any of them off the top of your head?
I do try and capture misconceptions with them. So, like this morning, Jane was talking about the zombie learning styles kind of a thing. So you can put that in there with some fact that's true about psychology that's kind of counterintuitive. So one of that's true but counterintuitive is like neurons in your body range from less than a millimeter to like more than a yard long, and that sounds unlikely, but the longest neuron in your body goes from your big toe to the base of your spine. So it actually goes up the whole length of your leg. And so people think, well, that's probably not true because it sounds outrageous, but it is true.
Right.
So, and then, the learning styles, the thing I thought was true is not true.
Yeah. Yeah. You just gave a talk. We're at SEPA, and you just gave a talk, and one of those, just thinking about, I think one of the things that resonated with me was when you talked about curiosity and making sure that you are not only modeling curiosity, but also setting up your students to be curious about things. So that kind of sounds to me like that's what this is. This gets students thinking, engaging in psychology, so in kind of a surprising way.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I think I think you're right. It is kind of it's not just engaging, but it does like raise curiosity about like what is the correct answer. And you always make them commit to an answer before you reveal the answer. So to prevent that hindsight bias is like, oh, well, yeah, I probably would have figured that one out eventually. So when I do it, it's always, you could use clickers, but I always just like doing raise your hand at the number of fingers. So 1, 2, or 3. And the students get used to this. And so that way they are committed to a response and they know, and then I have them discuss it. Then we do the poll again. And then we talk about what the correct answer is. So it's always better to, once they're publicly staked to an answer, they really want to know if they're correct or not. But if you just kind of say, oh, by the way, learning styles is not a thing, or, your neurons can be like this long or this short, they kind of go, yeah, okay. So, that's not a big deal. But if you've, is this true or not? And then in front of everybody, you've staked your guess, then you kind of care whether you're right or not,
So that whole holding up hands and doing numbers, you've been doing that for a while. I remember you talking about that in the past. How did you used to use that?
It's a part of a concept test, which is a formative assessment that Eric Mazur, who's a physicist at Harvard, developed. It's part of this whole technique he uses called peer instruction, where it's a multiple choice item that has like common misconceptions as the lures, and then the correct answer. And so you present it to them, and then you do a poll, which can be like clickers or originally he did like little holding up cards with 1, 2, 3, 4, which means you have to actually hand out little decks of cards. And I'm just thinking, why don't you just hold up the number of fingers instead of your cards? So, and then they discuss, and then you do the poll again. and then you discuss it as a class. And Missouri has really good evidence that really helps to reinforce learning, even if you got the answer wrong. It helps you to remember what the correct answer is. So it's a very powerful form of a formative assessment.
Yeah.
And it depends on two things. It depends on the quality of the question, and it depends on the discussion. So you got to have the discussion, and you got to have the quality of the question, do the poll twice. And so Missouri was using this, and he had good evidence for this. And this is like 20 years ago now. And so companies came in and said, well, we can automatize the polling. And so that's how clickers kind of came to be. And, clickers are actually the least important part of the whole thing, but that's the part that everyone knows. Like clickers. Well, I'll start using clickers, and I won't involve the part that's really important, like having a good question, the discussion part. It's like, just clicker, okay. Oh, so I must be doing it right because I'm using clickers.
It's like just scratching the surface of the opportunity it gives you. Yeah.
Yeah. So people like, oh, it's technology. So this must be helpful. And that's kind of what I talked about today. It's like a lot of people use formative assessments without really knowing why they're doing it. Yeah. It's like, I think this is a good idea, or this will kind of help reinforce this. But you should really be thinking like, are you combating a misconception? Are you helping them to think more elaboratively? Are you setting up transfer? You should have very specific reasons why you're doing this.
Yeah, you made. I think it was funny because you talked about cognitive load and mental exhaustion. Mm-hmm. And every time I hear you give a talk, I want it to be 6 hours long because it's moving sometimes. It's not that it's not clear. It's that it's so good. I just want to break down some of those ideas. I just want time to think about them. Mm-hmm. But anyway, you had this one slide and you said you just brainstormed all of the teaching tools that could have been considered best practices at some point in time, or new ideas, ways of, what did you call them? Pedagogical strategies? I don't know.
Best practices.
Sure.
Past, present.
How many did you have on that screen, do you think?
Well, we generated over 100, about 108, and then
in a few minutes, right? That must have been fun.
So what?
That must have been fun.
Yeah, it was. Well, it was incredible to how to do it, and it takes we are all pretty veteran, so we've seen these things come and go.
Give us some examples.
Things like laser disc players. That probably predates you. Betamax, PowerPoint was one.
Sure.
But like wiki boards, discussion boards, electronic discussion boards.
Yep.
And then you have interteaching, service learning, problem-based learning,
spec grading.
Exactly. Yeah, these things. And Bill Cerbin, one of my my longtime collaborator, he made the point when we talked at APA, is like a lot of times these are things that have been done before. They're just repackaged and renamed. So, he said, mastery learning has been a fad like at least 3 different times in 3 different contexts, but it's basically the same idea, and that's what I say, teaching changes, but it doesn't progress. We reinvent things all the time.
Well, you said it's lots of these things become fads, right? And there actually becomes some discipline or even institutional pressure to use some of these things, right?
Well, at my school, this is back in 2000, we got a grant to study problem-based learning. And so one of the schools mandated that every class could use problem-based learning. And I just looked at this and man, that's a disaster waiting to happen, because problem-based learning doesn't lend itself to certain kinds of content. It's okay if you can kind of grasp it pretty well, but if it's really abstract and complex, it's a very difficult thing for students to do. Only your best students are going to get it. You're going to leave a lot of your class behind. And then the teachers have to really reflect, they have to adapt on the fly because they're not actually controlling the acquisition of knowledge. They've got to identify this is a misconception, you're missing this point here. So, for a new faculty member who's just trying to get through, you've almost sunk them because there's just so much that they can't anticipate. And that experiment lasted for maybe a year or two before they backed off on that.
Psych Sessions is sponsored by W.W. Norton. Are you looking for more activities to promote scientific literacy? ZAPS 3.0 interactive labs from W.W. Norton are brief, hands-on activities that invite students to actively participate in the process of psychological research and discovery. Utilizing a consistent 5-part framework and incorporating transparent design principles, students experience classic psychological studies like the Stroop effect, false memory, the serial position effect, signal detection, and more. Once they've completed the experiment, students can compare their data with national data and their own classmates, offering the opportunity for rich in-class or online discussions. Bring the science of psychology to life for your students with ZAPS. For Psych Sessions listeners new to ZAPS, you can try it for free the next time you teach. Just go to siegel.wwnorton.com/Psych Sessions, and the folks at WW Norton will even integrate it into your LMS for you. That is Siegel, like the bird, SEAGULL.wwnorton.com/Psych Sessions.
Well, and that gets to a major point of your talk today was context. Mm-hmm. Context is really important to consider, and you've been saying that for a long time.
Yeah. It's really one of the things we know, that context is really important. But when we do research, the research looks at 1 or 2 factors, and everything else is controlled. So that's the kind of the way we do research. That's kind of the way we think about the importance of 1 or 2 factors. But teachers are dealing with individual differences. They're not looking to raise the average. They're trying to help every individual student learn, and they're dealing with a diverse population, and they're trying to create a context where everyone can learn. So it's much more complex than a lot of people kind of realize.
So you can tell me if I didn't get this right, but I would say one of the big takeaways as you're thinking through context, as you're thinking through not best practices in terms of if you do this, it's going to work. It's but one of the themes that kind of came through strongly was the why. Why are you doing this? Mm-hmm. And so since I've got you here, how would you, what questions should instructors be asking about these things?
Well, okay. So the whole idea of the cognitive challenge framework is that these are issues that you've got to deal with, and so you pick things that you're pretty sure are that are robust in your context, and this is part of that pedagogical content knowledge, that experience in teaching with a certain population, what has a pretty good chance of working, So it is I'm going to use this technique, and I know this is really good for, these kind of challenges. This is really good for, attacking misconceptions, and this is really very engaging for them. They'll see the value of this. They'll have a positive mindset, and then I've got to make sure I kind of pick up all these other kinds of things. But I've always got to monitor, whether this is actually working or not. So that's kind of you use what's robust, but you don't assume that just because I'm doing this technique, it's always going to work. There's always problems that pop up that you didn't anticipate, and that's different from the last group that you taught. And so you can use the challenge network or the challenge framework to be diagnostic about what could be the issue when things aren't going well in your class, and then you design to address that challenge. So it kind of gives you a framework to kind of think about your teaching, so you have a better sense of, what you need to address, the problems you need to address, and then, you can go and find techniques to address that particular challenge. So
You've written about the 9 cognitive challenges, and you always say that it's a 9-way interaction, and that gets a laugh every time that I've heard you say it.
Well, it is, but it's true, and that is the kind of some of the pushback I get from teachers, is like, your teaching is not that complex. And I'm saying, yes, it is. And, if you think it's not, then you're probably missing stuff. It is a complex skill. And people who are outside of teaching don't appreciate, just how complex it is. If you want to do it well, and do it effectively, it's a very complex skill. But, now we're seeing, you got a lot of this pushback from people saying, oh, well, if you just do this, then, they should learn. They don't really appreciate how complex it is. But I can look at my own career. It's like my understanding of teaching is so much more sophisticated now than it was, 20 years ago, or, 10 years ago. So you keep on thinking. I thought, trust, I've been doing that research for like 7 or 8 years, and it just kind of dawned on me. It's like, student trust is really important. And I went and looked, no one has ever studied it before,
I didn't realize that, because I knew you had been doing some writing about trust, but I didn't realize until you said it today that it is not a well-researched area in teaching.
There's a lot of research in organizational behavior, but there's only a scattered amount of work in teaching and learning, and you just wonder why, because that's, your class is essentially an organization, and to be successful, people in organizational behavior know exactly how important trust is. It's indispensable. So why don't we think about it in terms of like having students like be engaged and, having them overcome misconceptions? Trust plays a really critical role.
And is it trust in the instructor, trust in the discipline?
Yeah, that's okay. So I think you've got different kinds of trust, and the trust that I've been focusing on is student trust in the teacher. But you also have student trust in the institution, for example.
Sure.
And then you have how much the teacher trusts the students. And we're kind of seeing that with the ChatGPT, all this AI stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, the little sneaky kids, they're going to use it it's like, well, it's kind of a negative stereotype of what your students, like they don't really want to learn. They want to, and it may be true, some of them, but if you make it clear, like this is, you like say, I trust that you will do this because this is how you actually learn and get value out of this course, and this information will be valuable to you. So there is there's teacher trust of the students as well. So there's different kinds of trusts. I'm just focusing right now on student trust in the teacher, and how, if that's violated, then student motivation goes, just plummets.
Really?
It's really down.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and sometimes teachers do it just inadvertently, where they'll tell a joke which makes, diminishes some group, or there will be some policy which inadvertently disadvantages some people, and the students see that like some groups are favored over others, then their trust in the instructor is going to go down, and the teacher may be completely unaware of that.
Well, that's the scary part, is that you might be unaware of creating mistrust. Are there any things that that teachers can do to earn trust?
Well, that's part of the research that we're trying to do, trying to figure out ways to augment trust. And, I think trust is related to belongingness, a sense of community, and it's being welcoming and making it clear that you're there to help them. So, it is that competence, and then, integrity and then beneficence, being on their side, being reasonable, giving them multiple chances to learn and to show what they can do. So it's not like high stakes, make it or not, you've got to prove to me that you belong here. It's like, I believe all of you can make it, and I'm going to give you the opportunity that if you put in the right effort, then you have a good chance of succeeding. And if you don't succeed now, then, I hope you'll try again and succeed, eventually.
We'll be right back.
With this powerful course platform, Achieve, Macmillan Learning makes it easier than ever to integrate Macmillan Learning's acclaimed digital content into your course. Interactive ebooks, learning curve adaptive quizzing, additional assessments, immersive learning activities, an extraordinary video collection, and much more. And Macmillan is always here to help you confront today's toughest teaching challenges. For example, are you tired of students putting more work into cheating than studying? Our recently published Educator's Guide to Academic Integrity is full of ideas for using Achieve to take cheating off the table. The guide is available for free at macmillanlearning.com/coast to coast. Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
I wonder what the relationship is like between trust and just general like evaluations of instructors, like how that, because once you lose the trust of a student, everything must follow.
Yeah, well, we've done studies of betrayal where a teacher says, okay, I'm going to drop your lowest grade an exam, and then everyone does really badly, and the teacher, this is a hypothetical scenario. So a teacher says, all right, I'm so disappointed, you can't drop your lowest grade. And so they change the policy, which, goes against integrity, and it hurts beneficence. And we ask, like, how would students respond to it? And the motivation to do well plummets, evaluation of the teacher's overall competence plummets, so that kind of thing really drops completely. And you'd think, like, well, who would ever do such a thing like that? But I've been collecting stories on Twitter of horror stories of faculty who do that kind of thing. And actually, I'll give you an example. I've got a student now who's taking a course where the policy, it's like for this course is like they don't take late work, and so they're like no late work at all. And so this student got sick, was hospitalized, or and so she finally got it in, and it was like 20 minutes late, and she said, oh, sorry, no exceptions to this rule, and in the same course, in the same student who's just struggling with this course, it's like, you have a certain number of absences, and after that, you fail, and it's like a small number of absences, because what they're trying to do, they're trying to motivate students to come to class and to turn in their work on time. Yeah. So they have these very strict requirements. And so this student was, she woke up, she was not feeling well, she kind of had a sore throat. So she went to get tested. She missed class because she went to get tested, for COVID and strep and things like that. And, so she let the teacher know, and the teacher goes, great, I appreciate you did the right thing. What, by the way, one more absence and you fail the class. It's like, okay. My. So like, that's not engendering trust, and
what's interesting though is because so few of us were trained to teach. Like I'm telling this story right now when I speak to folks about the English teacher who made a great impact on me. I'm a first generation college student, high school English teacher. He taught me how to write. He's the reason why I can probably do much of anything I do now, in terms of kind of sticking with academics and just developing some of the skills that I developed. But he was probably that teacher. Now, for some reason, I responded well to him. But he was my model for many years coming into teaching. And so I thought that was the way probably to motivate students. And so it was, no mentoring, no teacher training, thrown into a college class with a textbook and say, go get them. That's all I had to rely on. So as you're saying this, I'm racking my brain about like if I'm doing anything like that have I done anything like that with policies or like things I should know better? I think I'm good now, but 15 years ago, I was a different teacher and probably more like that teacher, and which is too bad.
Well, I mean,
for those students especially.
Yeah, but you start out teaching, you don't want to be taken advantage of.
Yeah.
You don't want to be manipulated, and it's kind of understandable. And and of course there are times where students will try and manipulate you and things like that. It's not unheard of.
But it goes to trust, doesn't it? It's like the people, if you are paranoid that students are going to take advantage of you, you're not trusting your students very much. Yeah. Right?
Right.
So then you build a mistrust into the course.
That's right. And so, and one of the things I think that how I've changed over the years is basically saying, okay, I'm going to trust my students. And like I don't use lockdown browser, for example, and I tell my students I'd rather trust you. And are there going to be students who take advantage of that? Probably, but that and when I was a new faculty member, that probably would have bothered me a lot. And now now it's not like it doesn't bother me, but it's just saying, well, so be it. I'd rather treat the majority of the students, as being trustworthy and be taken advantage of by a few, rather than treat everyone as if you're not trustworthy to try and catch a few people who are going to take advantage.
It's so true. And just from experience, I am such a happier teacher now. Than trying to control so much of those things that you cannot actually control. Anyway.
Yeah, and and that's it comes down to I've got a son in college, and so you learn all the tricks that even with people who do use lockdown browser, like all the ways they have of getting around it, and it becomes this kind of this escalation of like they I do this, and then they figure out a way around it, and things like that.
Well, what do you think about the? I don't know. I've paranoia around the ChatGPT stuff. Yeah. What do you make of it?
I honestly don't know what to make of it. Yet. I think that's part of it's just the uncertainty of the whole thing. And actually, I'm hoping. Well, we're going to have a speaker at NITOP this year who's going to try and address this, and I expect between now and January, the whole sort of approach to ChatGPT and other generative AI is probably going to shift and change. It is, it is a sort of a new technology, and there's always uncertainty, after that kind of thing. So I honestly don't know what's going to become of it. But I have started, talking about it with the students. Like I signed a paper, I have plagiarism warnings, got paper mill warnings. So now I've got like a ChatGPT warning. It's not like a threatening kind of a thing. It's like if you use this, then well, first of all, it is cheating. So if I catch you, but really more importantly, like I'm assigning this because I think you'll find it interesting, and I think you will see how what we're learning in class applies to like your life situations, and I think you'll find this really valuable if you engage in it. So this is not something that I'm doing just because I have to have you write a paper. It's something that I think that you will find honestly interesting to do.
So if I'm a student in your class and I decide to use ChatGPT just to get some ideas going and then start using those ideas as part of my paper, where does that leave you as a teacher?
I think that I'm okay with that as long as you've reflected on them and thought through them and things. Because I tell students, like, they have the assignment so they can talk to each other. I said, but your writing should be your own, so feel free to talk with each other and bounce ideas of each other. But when it comes to writing, I want it to be a reflection of your own thinking. So I don't see, like, using an artificial sort of way of generating ideas sort of differently than just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other. That's something that we actually want to kind of encourage, where the discussion and fruitful and sharing of ideas and learning how to kind of exchange ideas. But then when it comes to writing, I want you to really sort of struggle with what you think is the best argument and the most convincing argument to you, and it's going to be different from other kind of people.
I kind of like the idea for my intro course. Now I'm on sabbatical right now, but I kind of like the idea for my intro course of just bringing in all the writing into the class, and that's one of the things that I'm playing with right now as I go back. Is to kind of sidestep GPT, at least in my intro class. I think there's ways to use it outside, but I don't know if that's actually what I'll do.
So you'll have them like sit there and do a writing assignment, just okay.
Yeah, use class time with them, give feedback, in real time. And I don't know. As you know, I put out this intro series.
Yeah, I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, thanks. And it's almost, so we recorded that end of 2022 mostly, and then I thought I'm gonna put it on the shelf, and then in June, when I start to I've got a chunk of time that just I can devote to intro, I'll start making those decisions. Hard to know exactly how I will where I'll land with all of that. But ChatGPT has to be considered now.
Yeah.
In the way that we put together our courses with our goals in mind, right?
Yeah.
Maybe we'll just pause for a second. I was going to ask you a just real practical question. The 2 truths and a lie, to go back.
Yeah.
Is that something you're doing regularly? How often are you doing it?
Well, I've started incorporating it into my general psych class, and so I've gotten kind of jammed up lately. But for a while there, it was basically every time I would try and think of at least one that we could go through, or some other kind of activity just to remind them of what we did. But I mean, so it's just kind of like something that they kind of expect coming in, that there's going to be something about it. And I tell them, don't look at your notes, just answer it as best you can. And so I don't know, we'll see how they respond to it. If anything comes about it, but it's just kind of a fun way to start the class.
Yeah, I love the idea. Okay, how are we doing for time? You all right?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay, so I think it's been years, Steve, since your first interview on Psych Sessions, right? It's been a long time.
Yeah, pre-pandemic.
Yeah, well pre-pandemic. I think you were one of the early folks that ever came on Psych Sessions, and now. Oh man, Eric knows numbers and things, but we're hundreds of episodes into something, I don't know, and a year is in. So.
And you and Eric deserve a lot of credit now it's an empire.
So many people have decided to just come and join us from the support of publishers, because we are a nonprofit and we don't take a salary, so that's really helpful, to we have so many hosts now doing different series and website. So yeah, it's what does Eric call it? The Psych Sessions. Empire is a nice word. Eric would like that, actually. But I can't remember what he calls it. Anyway, I have a million questions for you, but what have you been doing for the last 7 years or so since we talked? I know that you've had some significant. Hold on, let me fix my mic here. I know that you've had some significant things kind of come your way and embraced some things like NITOP.
Yeah. It's, I'm, when I should be kind of scaling back, I seem to be taking on more and more stuff. But since we talked last, I finally got the Cognitive Challenge Framework, what I talked about today. So that's published with Bill Cerbin, and that's been really well received. And we're trying to figure out ways of trying to sort of promote that as a way of thinking about teaching and learning. And we're talking about if we could expand it out to a book form. So that's one thing. And then also, in order to help students understand, I had the original series of how to study videos, back in 2011. And I've been trying to figure out ways of kind of repackaging that in a different format that would also be very appealing. And during the pandemic, I came up with the idea of choke points and pitfalls.
Yep.
So I have this paper and a series of videos now talking about the choke points, which are the constraints on the cognitive system that students have to deal with, like selective attention, working memory, and mental effort, then the rapid rate of forgetting. That students need to be aware of. Like this is going to be a real problem for you. You can't wait for the last minute because learning strategies are slow, forgetting is really fast, and then the pitfalls, which are the common mistakes that students make, like multitasking, using bad learning strategies, having poor metacognition. So that way it's kind of like in one diagram, I have a lot of useful information. So I've been promoting that.
Where are you promoting that right now?
I published an article on it in the Canadian Psychology. So, and then I've put the diagram out as a Creative Commons document, so people can use it. It's on Twitter. It's actually also on the SDP Facebook.
Do you have a webpage, stephenchew.com or something?
Yeah, I don't. So I should probably should. But put that some sort of central place. I mean, I've got it on Dropbox, but I have to sort of, it's not publicly
well, I know
available.
It's just the challenge. Even for psych sessions, we were so maxed actually doing the work that to put together a website seemed impossible for us to find time to do that. And so we had to hire somebody to do it, and that's not fun either. If you, spend your own money doing that. Thankfully we had some sources of income, so from publishers and stuff and that support. But no, I would, if you ever did a stephenchew.com, I could imagine all your videos there and your work and your areas of research. That'd be pretty neat.
Well, it would be, yeah. So, but it'd be, I don't know. It'd be a lot of work, but it would be nice to kind of centralize a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So you have those things out there, and with that work, are you targeting teachers to use that? Like, is that your primary audience, is teachers to assign to help students?
That's a good way of putting it, because it's meant to actually help teachers, and then it's meant to help teachers help students for both of those. Yeah. So once teachers know where those choke points and pitfalls are, they can anticipate them and help their students to kind of negotiate them or avoid them, and then they can also teach that information to students as well.
It's interesting. I don't know any other academic. I mean, I guess there's some books and stuff that have gone kind of viral, but the fact that you on YouTube in 2011, you said?
Yeah, 2011.
Had these, you put these out. We know the story. People can go back and listen to your earlier interview from a few years ago if they want to know the whole story. But you put that out, and it's not like I don't know what you thought would happen. You thought you were just going to help some students, and then it went viral. Yeah. Basically.
Yeah, well, I knew there was nothing else out. I'd looked, and there was nothing else out there on like how to study. Now there's a lot more stuff now than there used to be, but there just really wasn't anything that was valid. So it was like study while listening to Beethoven not Beethoven, Bach, and then chew gum while you're studying. So that was kind of the level it was at.
That's right.
So, when I put them out there, I knew that there was nothing else there like that. The question was like, would people, pay attention to them or pick them up? And at that point, the internet, YouTube wasn't young at that point, but still, it was, I guess, still relatively young.
Yeah.
And and I would have, been happy, like like if it reached 1,000 or 5,000,
sure.
I would have been happy with that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just people started using it in classes, and it became adopted. And so so many people have downloaded them or copied them. I mean, I have no idea exactly how many.
Yeah, it's a lot, but I think that it's an interesting phenomenon because, first of all, it's a non-traditional contribution to to the way things are usually done in academia, right?
Yeah.
So that's interesting, but also, and I'm thinking about this because I'm interested in your the word you used about, and which I'm going to forget the word now, but in promoting whatever an idea that you have out there right now, the cognitive challenges or the pitfalls or whatever. We maybe don't do a great job in the discipline of taking good ideas and finding good ways to package them. We have like these really tried and tested ways. We do it through publications, or we do it through journals, or we do it through trade books or academic books or something like that, right?
Yeah. We don't really keep up with the technology, and it's actually something that I think is an intriguing question of like, if let's say I was coming up and for tenure and promotion, and I have these videos that have been seen by now millions of people. How does that compare to an article I publish in some journal that's read by 20 people? That's the way a lot of it is done now. Nowadays on social media. I mean, we need to encourage good information out there on social media because there's so much bad information out there. But yeah, tenure and promotion guidelines, haven't really kept up with.
No. Well, that'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, it's got to change over time, it seems to me. But I heard you give this talk. You always have these ideas, but to actually make it to New Orleans, to SEPA, to see Steve give this talk I'm glad we recorded it earlier today. And thanks for allowing us to do that. But and think about all the invited keynote speakers of all these conferences. And once we put together a talk or promote ideas, they just kind of evaporate, unless they catch fire somehow.
Yeah, and even if when they do that, I mean, so John Dunlosky in an interview I saw or heard, talks about like even once you convince students like there are better ways of studying, you find that not that many people actually put it into practice, because it's hard to change your behavior and deal with the constraints. And I think that's true of teaching as well. It's like we provide a better way of talking about teaching, but it's hard to get people to kind of change their habits, their way of doing things.
So you're still doing research on trust.
Yeah.
You've written about the choke points and the pitfalls. Are you still working on that stuff, or?
Well, I haven't done much. That was kind of like I haven't done anything more on that. That was designed to be helpful for teachers and students, and that's not really a research area. That was just something I put out there to be just to be useful.
But you're thinking about a book?
I'm thinking about a book on the cognitive challenges. And trust is part of that. So
is trust just does it stand out because what you found was less research on it?
Right. Yeah. And then I've also, the same is true with curiosity. There's a little more in curiosity, but there's not a lot in terms of specifically like what should a teacher do to create curiosity there? How should you go about doing that? I mean, I think intuitively, good teachers know how to do that, to introduce something that kind of creates a sense of curiosity and mystique, but we need to kind of try and come up with some guidelines of how can you teach in a way that promotes curiosity.
I love that that when you talked about the book, What the Best College Teachers Do, that you suggested that maybe it should have been titled What the Best College Teachers Know How to Do.
Yeah, that's right.
Can you just talk to our listeners a little bit about the difference between those two things?
Yeah, well, my argument is like we have this emphasis on best practices and what people actually do, the motions they go through, the kind of how they present information, the method that they're supposed to be using. Is it lecture? Is it discovery learning or something like that? But really what's more important is like knowing how students learn and, knowing how students learn this specific topic area so that you can tailor the way you teach to kind of meet the different challenges and potential problems the students are going to have. A teacher, a really expert teacher knows how to get the most out of any pedagogy they use. It's not like this is the only pedagogy that works. It's like I've got 4 different pedagogies I could use, and I know how to get the most out of each one of them. And if this one doesn't work, then I'm going to switch to this one and implement it in the way. So it's not about what I do, it's about what I know how to do. I know all these different methods and I know how to implement them effectively. I'm not just going through the motions of this.
Well, and you recalled, it's been a while since I read that book, but you recalled that that one of the findings was that the best college teachers know how to adjust and adapt to things that aren't working necessarily.
That's right. So even though he called it what the best college teachers do, it really was, how the best college teachers think about their teaching. They're constantly adjusting and adapting.
Yeah.
And Nuthall has this book, The Hidden Lives of Learners, which is one of my favorite teaching and learning books. He says in there, that he did a study. He asked teachers, what kind of pedagogy do you use? And then he actually observed them, and he found no relationship between what the teachers said they were doing and what they actually were doing. Okay, because every teacher adapts their pedagogy to their like students and their context, and sometimes you adapt it so much that you're actually not doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Interesting.
There's been a number of studies where you give, like there was one where a teacher is supposed to use a certain kind of strategy, and they don't know what's important about it and what's not important about it. So they may follow strictly the parts that really aren't important, and and ignore the parts that are important. Actually, it's like what we talked about, concept tests and clickers. So it's like if I'm using a clicker, I must be using like concept tests, because clickers are a critical part, and it turns out actually they're the least important part. What's really important is the question, the discussion. So teachers think, oh yeah, I do peer instruction because I use clickers, but that's not what peer instruction really is. So knowing the key parts of any pedagogy and what it's supposed to accomplish allows you to implement it in a way that'll get the most out of it.
Yeah. So it seems that, there's a metacognitive question there for teachers, which is why? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Why have I made this decision? To what end? What do I hope to accomplish with it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't ask that question. It's like, this is a best practice, so I should do it. And if I do it, I must be a good teacher because I'm doing the best practice.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think that there's some reinforcement for that kind of thing too, right? Which was where we started. So, Steve, I know we don't have too much time left, but I want to talk to you about some of the other things you're doing. I don't understand what ResearchGate is necessarily, but I signed up for it at one point. So every time you publish something, I get something in my inbox that says Steve Chu has published an article, and I can't stop thinking to myself every time that comes in, how the hell does he find time to write so much? But even your blog stuff comes through. You write for
Teaching Professor.
The Teaching Professor.
Yeah.
I told you earlier today, I love that expert or advice to, I don't know who it was to, teachers, but it was new teachers, lie, cheat, and steal.
Lie, cheat, and steal, yeah.
Where did you come up with that one?
And that's like, this is like years ago. We established a faculty mentoring program, and the coordinator, who was a friend of mine, asked me to talk to new faculty, give them advice, and so I tried to think of like, what can I say that's memorable but also accurate. And when I was in graduate school, I attended a couple of training sessions on how to teach. And the one piece of advice I remember out of that whole thing, well, actually there are two pieces of advice. Number one is don't jangle your change in your pocket while you're teaching. That was the first piece of advice I got that I remember. The second one was that textbooks lie, okay, and because they can't present. This is general psych. They can't present information in all of its nuance, because general psych students wouldn't understand it. It would be too overwhelming with detail. And it said, and you will lie. It says, just make sure that the lies you tell match the lies in the textbook. And I always remembered that. And that was kind of the basis of it. So what else can we talk about? Like, well, you cheat, you take advantage of what other people have already done, and then you steal, you find the best, teaching demonstrations and activities out there, and you use them, and so that's the lie, cheat, and steal part of it. And I sort of put it in that context, and it just makes it more memorable. Yeah. But there's truth in each of them. But as I had at the beginning, I'm not advocating academic dishonesty there. But it is absolutely true that teaching is exactly the opposite of research when it comes to credit for like establishing activity or establishing like research or scholarly work. In research, you care deeply about making sure you get credit for for the things you've done. In teaching, it's like, I developed this activity here. You should try this. It's like we just give these things away, and it's exactly the opposite mindset of research.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Well, if folks haven't read that, just even for entertainment value, I just loved it. So I did think it's funny that you had to put a disclaimer at of course you did. Of course you had to put a disclaimer that I'm not advocating for lying, cheating, and stealing. But yeah, that's the world we live in right now. Somebody would take it out of context probably if you didn't do that. Okay, so you're writing for them. You are. How often are you posting to that blog?
Well, it's 12 monthly installments.
Okay.
And, I agreed to do it because I can get most of them written in the summer time. So, and I just agreed to do another year's worth. And I'm going to try and get most of them done during the summer. I suspect that just having that responsibility must just churn up your curiosity and just thinking about teaching in ways you wouldn't do necessarily. Yeah, absolutely. It gets back to like when we were talking about how I'll see something, that would be great in my cognitive class. I need to put that into a slide. So now I see something and I think, well, that would make a really interesting, blog post. So I keep a list of potential ideas and things like that. So we'll see. The first year, it was kind of novel. We'll see how the second year goes.
So my other question was, where else are you writing? What else are you doing?
Getting that stuff out, and then I've been approached about another major writing project, but it's too early for me to talk about that one. But like I say, it's a great opportunity. But it's just like at my age, where everyone else is scaling back, all of a sudden I seem to be ramping up. And doing
you don't have to share, but is it in your wheelhouse of the stuff that we've been talking about, your research and stuff?
It's kind of related.
Yeah. Okay.
I can. Well, no, I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah, no pressure. Well, when you do make that decision, we'll make sure that we talk to you about it so that we can get it out there to folks.
Yeah.
Can you talk to our listeners just a little bit about NITOP? How long have you been? Are you called the director or the chair?
The chair of the organizing.
The chair of the organizing.
Yeah. So I'm in my fifth, or I guess going on sixth year of doing this, and I've had one normal year. Yeah,
lucky you. Hey, here, take the keys, and then the world falls apart.
Yeah. But we've come through the pandemic. We had a terrific NITOP last year, and it was kind of closer. It's the closest one to normal, pre-pandemic that we've had. So I hope we can build on that. But like everybody else, I mean, we were affected by it, and that's our only source of income. I mean, we're a nonprofit. We're not associated with any organization like STP or anything, and so it put a real financial strain on us doing a virtual conference one year and then a limited conference the second year. So we're trying to get back on our feet. But if last NITOP is any indication, then there's a tremendous interest and desire for that kind of conference. A conference totally devoted to understanding teaching. That it's when I took it over. I wrote an article about what it's all about, and what I came to the conclusion is NITOP should be 4 days of teacher bliss. Everything that the teacher could possibly want. From professional development to laying out on the beach to spa time and things like that. So it just treating teachers the way they deserve to be treated for 4 days, and so that's kind of what we try to accommodate. And coming through the pandemic, it made us rethink a lot of things, and we sort of had some issues kind of came to a head with where we were, and we decided the right thing to do was to try a new location. And so we're in a new location, a new resort, a little farther south than where we are, but we're super excited about it. We're hoping the facilities will be even better than we had before. So
yeah, I know people are really looking forward to the change, just because change is interesting, right?
Yeah.
So what airport will people fly into now?
They'll fly into Fort Myers instead this time. I can't remember the abbreviation of it, but it's Fort Myers, and it's so it's not as big. It's a major airport. It's not Tampa, St. Pete. But the good news is that it's closer by. Whereas you flew into Tampa and you still had another 45-minute drive to get to St. Pete Beach.
Yeah.
So we're going to give it a try and see how it goes. But I honestly believe that NITOP is special because of the people that it attracts. You get 400 teachers together, and it's just teachers are the most generous people in the world, and it's just a terrific experience.
That's nitop.org, right?
Yeah, nitop.org.
NITOP.org, so folks can go there and check that out and register for the conference. Actually, are registrations open now, or submission open for pies and stuff?
It's going to be probably in May.
Okay.
Well, registration will be open, and then posters and pies will be open, and then demo and teaching slam and things.
Great, and obviously, as usual, great lineup of speakers will be announced at some point, right?
Yeah, I'm working diligently on that, and that's another thing actually that with this uncertainty, it was really hard to. It took a long time to get speakers lined up, but I could not have been happier with the group that we had.
How do you deal with is there, of course there's stress. There's stress involved in this job. How in the NITOP piece, how are you at dealing with that?
Well, yeah, it's it's a lot of responsibility, but what makes it possible is we've got Annette Cook as our coordinator, and she's just fantastic. And then the committee is just amazing.
Ken Carter, Bridget Hart, and you.
Beth Morling.
Beth Morling, of course.
So it's just an amazing.
Good folks there. Yeah. Well, that's January 3rd through 6th again, as usual.
Yeah, it's always January 3 through 6.
Okay. And what's your? If folks have questions, should they just email NITOP? Is there a NITOP generic email address?
Yeah, there's a NITOP generic address that goes to Annette Cook, and then they can email me if they want, but Annette probably can answer their questions better than I can.
Well, great. Steve, what else have you been up to? I don't want to forget anything. Is there anything else that your book with Doug Bernstein and Sue Franz is in its 3rd edition?
Yeah.
Right? And the title is?
So teaching psychology step by step.
Step by step.
Yeah. And so chances are we'll probably be revising that because COVID changed everything, and so it's we need to kind of address all the changes in teaching that have gone on.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you don't seem to be slowing down at all, Steve. So are you, do you dream about retirement someday, or is it something that you are not really interested in yet? You're having too much fun?
Well, it's, my longtime colleague, Bill Cerbin, retired, and he's actually doing more teaching and learning stuff than ever. And I get tremendous enjoyment and satisfaction out of working with teachers and helping them out. So, I think, at least, for a few years in retirement, that's something I'd really enjoy devoting a lot of my time to doing, just paying it forward, because so many people helped me when I was starting out. I want to make sure I leave a good legacy for the people.
Well, that's a theme that came through in your talk today too. You were talking about the generosity of this community and of the STP as an organization. It's really clear to me that that's one of the things that you value is that you've received so much. You're trying to pass on as much as you can. I think people really appreciate that. So, well, Steve, I think that's it. Unless there's anything else that you can think of that we missed, that's an update. So we'll talk to you in 5 years or so.
Always great talking to you, Garth.
Thanks, Steve.